Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namaskar everyone. Welcome to our sixth session on how to study Bhagavad Gita. So this is we are discussing Karma Yoga today, which is chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, and we've already covered chapter 1 and 2 in our previous sessions, and we will cover some key aspects, some key points of Karma Yoga. What you, Nilesh?
So in terms of setting a stage for the third chapter, so most of or almost everything that Krishna wants to say is already being said in the second chapter. Quickly, so Sankhya Buddhi is like a jnana. Think of Yoga Buddhi as a karma or karma yoga. And a perfect blend of the both is a Sthita Prajna. Still, through that discussion, although Krishna has said the importance of both and the balance between the both and how they are together, there is that thing that Krishna has left there and even actually answered somewhat. So Arjuna's question that begins in this third chapter is relevant. He's saying, well, in some sense, you are still putting the karma down. In some sense, karma is considered like as if inferior to jnana, but then you are asking me to do karma. Okay, and so that question is basically leading to, as if we can say, leading to this chapter, and then it gets into 3, 4, and 5. So that's basically what I wanted to say. And what Krishna is going to discuss is, he's saying ekam sankhyam cha yogam cha, but he's saying there is a subtle difference that is between a sadhak and a siddha. And therefore, he is emphasizing now Karma Yoga. Back to you.
Okay, yeah, it starts with Jayasi Cheta Karmanaste. So that's right. So one of the key concepts that Krishna tries to tell Arjun, in this chapter is Anasakta Karma Yoga or Nishkama Karma Yoga. That is, do your karma without, and we had that shlok in the previous chapter also, Karmanyavadikaraste. So would you like to elaborate on this Anasakta Karma Yoga concept that Krishna is trying to tell Arjun? Why is he trying to tell Arjun, practice this Nishkama Karma Yoga?
Okay, great point. So the reason for Krishna's insistence on Nishkama Karma Yoga is in the context of a karma. So now Krishna is asking Arjun to fight, that is for a dharma yuddha and all that. So in a way he's saying, say, doing karma, now in responding to Arjun's question, doing karma may not be a virtuous act, yet not doing karma is definitely very bad. And how do you solve it? You solve it through, the solution to that is a Nishkam karma. For example, and we are going to look at actually some examples, when we get into this chapter, like specifically how somebody has done it. But just to again emphasize on that sadhaka versus the siddha or sadhya, the person who is now achieved perfection. So for sadhaka, as if like Krishna is saying, and we see that in a Yoga Vasishtha also, Vasishtha Muni telling Bhagwan Ram. So sadhaka is more like what? Antas tyagi bahis sangi. See, that's the expectation. Like in Yoga Vasishtha, Maharishi Vasishtha is telling Rama, because Ram is a prince and now he has to rule. He says, Antas tyagi bahis sangi loke vichara Raghava. Because he's like in action, right? He's going to be in action as a prince, as a king. So he has to do that. Now, mithyachar would be exactly opposite. For example, Shlok 6, which is to say, you just control yourself and don't do it, doesn't mean like, now therefore you are free. So that person's situation is like antas sangi bahis tyagi. Through indriya, he is not doing anything. So which is what Arjun likes to do, Arjuna's Vishada. Internally, he's convinced why these people need to be killed. But outside, through some other different scenario that he has created for himself, he has created a situation like Antasangi. Inside, he knows they are wrong and he has to get the Rajya, and even he knows the consequences, what Draupadi would say and what everyone would say, what other Kshatriyas would say. But still, what he's doing there, not fighting, is a mithyachar, because Antasangi Bahistyagi. Externally, he's saying, I'm not fighting or I will not fight. But inside, has it truly transformed? The answer is no. And of course, the Sankhya, that's why Krishna begins with Sankhya right away, and the idea there is the Sankhya at the Siddha stage, the person would be Antastyagi and Bahistyagi, which is a perfection. But since that will take time, therefore, Karma Yoga. That is the answer. And if you do karma and if you don't want the negatives that come with it, the side products, byproducts, or negative products of it, then Nishkam Karma is the solution.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to ask you a question which I was going to ask at the end. But since you said this Antastyagi Bahisangi, or the Siddha and Sadhya, or the ultimate state, in fact, in this chapter, he ends by saying that Sukshma, like Indriya, is more Sukshma than Deha. So the senses are more subtle than the body, hence important. Then buddhi is mana is more subtle than the senses, so more important. Buddhi is more subtle, more sukshma than the mana, so buddhi is important. But atma is the most sukshma, the most subtle, and hence try to realize the atma, try to get the atma jnana. That's how he ends, I think, this chapter. So I think that's what you were trying to say. But however, we'll come to how to achieve that indriya sanyam a bit later. But before going to that, the second very important, one of the very important concept I thought in this chapter is Swadharma. Shreyan Swadharmo Viguna, Paradharma Svanushtita. So can you elaborate on one, what is dharma, and then second, what is Swadharma for all of us?
Okay. Yeah. So first thing, the one thing is said, like if we, of course, from a jnana perspective or tattva jnana perspective, it is very important to discuss what is Swadharma. But in another way, Swadharma is something that's, people say, oh, so please tell me what is my Swadharma. And everyone will ask, even we may feel like asking. But in reality, Swadharma is so natural that truly speaking, there should be no need for us to ask. For example, what is mother's Swadharma? Mother as that role is naturally to take care of the baby. That just comes naturally to her. It's not like somebody has to guide, unless in some exceptional circumstances, if the health-wise or some other mana buddhi, sharira, some other issues, that's different. But we are talking normal situation. Similarly, the place where you take birth, the people around you, your family, your neighborhood, your village, your town, your city, your country. The circumstances, the place you work, that just becomes sort of the natural, whatever is required there. Think of the ikigai we talked about, what you are good at, what the society or your surrounding needs. Okay, that's what it is. And also, because we are talking this, we are referring to this discussion happening 7,500 years ago. Think of the system of that time. So like a varnashram system, chaturvarnyam maya srishtam gunakarma vibhagasha. Now, so in that varnashram system, depending on your specific inclination and your role, doing that is a swadharma. Okay. Now what happens is, today we will say, okay, come on, where is the varnashram dharma? So I'm saying varnashram system. It may not be exactly the way it was possibly defined in, say, Bhagavad Gita, but the fact remains that there is that naimittik karma, nitya karma, okay, that is something to be done. And there are these many wonderful elements in this chapter, which is like a, what you call symbiotic relationship with everyone around you. And by that, I don't mean just the human beings or even the living beings, but even the non-living beings, the sustainability. So that kind of tells you what you need to do. And again, since we are talking sadhak and a siddha, depending on your station in life, how much you are into still on a sadhana versus a siddha, still in either case, people, both parties will be doing karma. Their attitude towards that is different. For example, for a Siddha will still do karma, but he or she will do it from the point of view of Loka Sangraha. And quickly there he gives, Krishna gives example of a Janak, for example.
Yeah.
So, right? So Janak is doing that. Why he's doing it? Because in a way he is a king and he has to set the standards for everybody else, right? So like a Loka Sangraha, or because he's in a position where everyone is looking at him, and then as if that's not sufficient, because usually that's not sufficient. For example, we may read biographies and so on, but we still wonder, like, whatever is been written in the book, is that really true? Because it's a second person narrative, that person is not front of us. So then Krishna gives his own example. He says, even actually I don't need to do anything. Now when he says he's referring to the Parabrahma, representation. He's a proxy for a Parabrahma there. And he says, I am actually don't need to do it, but I still do it as a free from kartavya bhavana also, and then praptavya bhavana. No, just because I have no other choice, therefore I am doing it. That's not the case. And I'm not doing it because there is some expectation from me. I mean, there is no expectation from a son, but as if it feels like, therefore son is given as a drishtanta. It feels like son is doing the work. Actually, in a way, he's not doing the work. So that is a position of a Siddha. So that's all I have to say on a Swadharma. It's actually so natural to us. Naturally, it will change as our path from sadhana to Siddha goes away. As we transform ourselves, our Swadharma will change. Swadharma changes with the roles, change of roles. Swadharma changes with, say, age. Right? Swadharma will change with your orientation, meaning because of education, because of change of place, because of change of profession. So all of that actually will lead to that. And a person who has no expectation, or a society has no expectation from that person, still that person will do it because of a Loka Sangraha, which is to say, just as a crude example, but still it makes sense. Say somebody is now a billionaire. Okay. Now, why does he or she does still the work? Like, it sounds like now that person should be lazily just lying around. He or she doesn't need to do it. Right. But they do it from or they ought to be doing it. And usually you will see they do it from a Loka Sangraha perspective. Okay. Which is to say, not from a desire, not from a vasana, but from a ichcha, as in like a wish or a will. And that is something one ought to do until we are in this body and with this package of a body and a mind.
Yeah. So I think basically Swadharma is the righteous acts that we do for sustenance, beginning with sustenance of self, sustenance of family, sustenance of the village, extended family, city, your country, and the universe, So the corporates now talk of sustainability, but I think the dharma, the very word dharma, which means sustainability, was spoken by so many thousands of years ago by our rishis, So it's the righteous acts that we do, that one does in whatever stage in life that person is, as a as a mother, father, student, teacher, parent, whatever. Yeah. So coming back to that third question that I asked, actually spoke about before, the Indriya Sanyam. So everywhere in this chapter, Krishna is talking about control your senses, control your senses, control your senses. You need to do that. How is it practically possible for us, ordinary human beings, to control our sense of desires like kama, krodha, and and continue to do our duties or our righteous acts, for sustenance or for sustenance of ourselves and humanity? So, is there any practical tips that you can give from your personal experience, or you would like to share?
Okay. In fact, the previous topic that we discussed, like the topic of Swadharma, in a way, that is the answer, if you think of it. Because, and in that context, for example, I think it's 32, 33, 34, like and 26, sorry. So, Nabuddhi Vedam Janed Adnyanam Karma Sanginam, right? For example. So, a big truth should not cut a smaller truth. Meaning, somebody may have more knowledge, some other person may have less knowledge, but usually every person has minimal knowledge to perform the Swadharma. Okay, because think of it, that defines that person's Swadharma, right? That person's current knowledge base, qualifications, whatever you want to call it, a station in life, place, defines the Swadharma. So the person, typically, normally speaking, has enough intelligence to do the Swadharma. Now, karma and all those desire will come, and therefore the person may deviate, just like what happened to Arjun. So Swadharma, so I will give you more, but Swadharma is actually the answer to control the Indriya. And in that context, there is another verse. I think that's what I was thinking. Say number 32 or 33. Now, you may know it by heart, but if not, that's fine. Let me just give me a second. Let me just.
I don't know numbers that. Yeah. I'll pull it up.
Yeah. So no, I got it here. So say Sadrusham Cheshtate Swasya Prakrute Jnanavanapi Prakrutim Yanti Bhutani Nigraha Kim Karishati. Now, I have to admit that I understood this verse in a wrong fashion. Frankly, even listening to many Bhagavad Gita discourses on this particular verse, or the discourse may not be on this particular verse that I'm listening to from somebody, but this, not one person, many people will always quote this, Nigraham Kim Karishati. And this, for a long time, the way I heard it, or the way I heard interpreted, and I would admit that to an extent I internalize it, which is to say, and you tell me what you have read. Even a jnani behaves according to his his inclinations, the guna combinations, like prakruti guna. So what to speak of others? Even that is how it was discussed. And I think, when I go through verse by verse and I try to understand Karma Yoga, that's not what is meant, because it comes just after the discussion of Swadharma. So actually what it is said, because see, after that verse, the next one is Shreyan Swadharma Viguna Paradharma Bhayavam. Yeah. Which is to say, the jnani does what he does because that is his natural state, that is his swabhava. Okay. Nigraham kim karishyati, meaning you don't try to artificially try to mimic him, or don't try to pretend like him or her. That's not going to be useful. That is not going to be your swadharma. That will create a problem for you to control your senses. Okay, just like even Arjuna's situation. So now Arjuna suddenly is trying to behave like a sannyasi, which is like a different state. Think of that as a jnani, from a kshatriya to like somebody else. That artificial mimicking will not work. In that sense, it is there. And not like saying even the jnani cannot control, what to speak of others. I don't think it is meant in that sense. So that's the one point I wanted to make. And then last point, you said, what are the simple methods to do it, for example? Okay, so Swadharma is a most important solution for that. Like, find out what your Swadharma is. Don't be tempted by what others are doing. Okay, it looks from a distance, it looks great. In a typical corporate setting, I'll say, like, say, for example, the company I work for, like, we were in a Six Sigma and Lean for a long time. And it used to feel like somebody is there. He say, I want to get my green belt certification. Once that person has that, he says, I want to somehow find a black belt role. Almost like people felt, hey, once you got the black belt certification, your life is done. When actually you go there and you do that, you realize that's not enough. And then the person thinks, maybe if I get master black belt certification, it is done. When you do that, you realize that's not enough. So the whole point is, sometimes it feels tempting to somebody else that's very cozy, that's very exciting, that has got popularity. Which are those some of the temptations that we feel? Again, the reason is, understand your progress is going to be through the Swadharma. The last quick point that you said, and I'll let you conclude if you want. So you say, how do you control the Indriya? One is simply said, right, that
actually, sorry to cut you, but let me give you a modern time example, especially that we ladies face. Like you said that a natural swadharma of a mother is, taking care of the child. But in today's world, women also work. They have their own ambitions and aspirations. So which is the right swadharma? How do we balance? So that's where everybody is kind of juggling. All the women who want to work out there, also take care of the families. Like patni dharma is also one swadharma. Matru dharma is a swadharma. Similarly, they want to go out there and also, because they have certain skill sets, and they could be an engineer, could be an accountant, could be a lawyer. I mean, and that is their swadharma too, because that's what is naturally coming to them. And then how does one balance? So that is a very that is a question asked to me by my clients also, who are who come to me for astrology reading, or how do we balance this? And when you talk of when I try to tell them about Swadharma or Gita or balancing life, so in that sense, what kind of a suggestion you will give?
Okay, so one on the so like practical way how to do it, I'll come to that, and we can end there. But one thing, for example, you said a lady, or say female employee meaning somebody who's also working but also mother and a wife and so on, and how does she balances this? For example, that's true for a husband also, man, whatnot. But see, for example, Arjun, by the way, what the question that you kind of raised on behalf of people, in a way, Arjun also raises that question. If you go to like towards the end, like 36, 3, chapter 3, 36, 37, 38, somewhere there, he asked the question, see, why does one meaning as in say human being, does the papa, like without desire? I mean, so for example, why does he get the temptation actually, even when like as if like he doesn't have a control? Okay. Why does person do it, like gets pulled towards something without one's desire? That is the question Arjun asked to Krishna. And of course, Krishna gives the answer by saying it's a kama, that's the answer. And then kama is equal to krodha, But before we jump there, actually, Krishna doesn't explicitly say that. But when Arjun asked the question, how come, why the person is pulled towards something, a bad activity, which is to say non-swadharma activity or paradharma activity, you can say, without one's desire? The fact remains that it is actually not true. And I'll bring back to like the question that you posed, whether for a man or a woman and playing these different roles. Because somebody will say, you know what, I know my priority in my life is my children, say a mother would say, or even a father would say, but I need to earn for the family, or I need to earn for the sustenance. And that could be very well true. We are not talking right or wrong. Now, this is all true, but the fact remains that even when the person is saying the priority is my children, or priority is my career, or priority is my husband or wife, or whatever it is, if you look at it there, so therefore, just like the Arjun asked, like, why I feel like still I have to do this, and this. Actually, it is not true that you don't have the desire. It may not be a gross desire, but there is always a sukshma desire, a subtle desire is there, and that is the real answer. Now, what is that subtle desire? That subtle desire is a kama. The person may not be able to do it. For example, somebody will claim that actually, you know what, I don't feel the attraction for these pleasures, the luxury, and so on. The person may say that, person may mean it at a very sthula, like very gross level, but inside at a subtle level, that desire is there. And therefore, that person decides the priority of what he or she does. And that is that Krishna is, when Krishna is saying kama is as in desire, it cannot be shown, but it is there inside. And this is for everybody to introspect, and that never goes away. Therefore, kama is considered as a perpetual enemy. So that's number one. In that context, when I said why it is a sukshma, there he gives those like a drushtanta, durane zakilagni dhulene arasadasa, right? What is that? So in order to make that specific clean decision, understanding your Swadharma, what stops you from that is this subtle karma, subtle desire that you have. And therefore, mirror and a dust is like a example of a sattva desire. See, it is of a sattva desire. The dust is like sometimes not even seen, just like on our computer laptop screen. It's not seen, but it is there. It's a very subtle. Fire and smoke is kind of a rajas, and then fetus, and then the vara. I don't know what's the English word. Do you know what the English word for that? Varene veshtila garva. But the covering of the baby, when it is in mother's tummy, right? That's like a kind of a tamas type of thing. And so I just want to say, and then give it back to you, Ashwini, which is to say now, okay, so what do we do? Well, what we have got, we have to still work with what we have. That is part of the Swadharma too, by the way. So I have got my indriya at a certain level of sattva rajatama. I have got my mind at a level of certain refined level of mind and certain refined level of buddhi. There is a nitya karma, naimitik karma, sustainable karma that I have to do. This is not so much doing favor to somebody. Actually, it is like, repaying the debt of, matruruna, pitruruna, samajaruna, that kind of thing. So with my sharir, I will try to do it. Now, if I do the Swadharma to the best of my ability, that will do good to my sharir, but it will do good to my mind, and it will do good to my buddhi. But then if you see another verse, it says, okay, so that this happens, but then it says now it comes from the buddhi. Now the good buddhi leads to a balanced mind, and a balanced mind leads to indriya niyaman. So it is that circular game that we are going to play, which is to say, if you eat a nutritious food, your mind remains kind of stable, and if your mind is stable, your buddhi grows. If you have a grown, very mature buddhi, then it is very easy to balance the mind. And if the mind is balanced, then it is easy to control the indriya. That is kind of the path and the feedback loop that Krishna is describing to Arjun in terms of controlling the indriyas.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it's all about then prioritizing. So if the same example, extending the same example of a lady being a mother as well as a corporate employee aspiring, say in a executive position somewhere, it's all about how she is able to prioritize at that point in life, because the priorities will change, with time.
Yes.
So that's where that balancing will always be required. Especially I'm talking from women's point of view, because that's where they're always told, like, feeding the baby or going to office, baby's crying, coming back to the baby, or being in the office because some decision is to be made there, some strategic decision is to be made. So in that sense, I feel, and that's what I keep telling people who come for advice also, is that balancing and prioritizing at all times during the day and during your life is the key to being able to achieve both, the best of both worlds. Somewhere something has to be given lower priority and something has to be given a higher priority, and that's the knack,
Correct.
of successful at both.
Correct. So, and that combines with the Swadharma in some sense. For example, you said Mahatva Mapan or Taratamya, which is essentially priority.
Yeah.
So, for
Swadharma
example,
is Swadharma of a lady doctor. Being a doctor is a Swadharma, but being a mother is also a Swadharma. A lawyer being, so balancing and prioritizing at every stage of her life will be the key.
Or in a sense, compartmentalizing, right? Compartmentalizing. Yes. For example, there are hungry people, say in this city, okay? Who, I mean, if truly, let's say they are going hungry, that you can find in any place. And there are hungry people in Rwanda. Now, both are problems. Both problems needs to be referred to. But there is no point me sitting here, not doing anything about the local problem and just thinking, how am I going to solve the problem in Rwanda? Is the problematic thing. That is not understanding my Swadharma. That is not to say I should be so selfish that only worry about the problems in, say, the place I live in or the city I live in. But first, that is easy to do. If I become successful in solving problem here, now I learn lessons from it. Now I can solve problems somewhere else. But just to think of something there, like for a big scale, which is what? Actually, I'll make some quickly 3 points, which is to say, when people say sharira, mana and buddhi, Okay, when we get the desires at a very gross level, our body is kind of a happy, like, I want to eat a modak and I want to laddu, then I feel good about that. Okay, if like I'm in a good company, then my mind enjoys it, like humor and whatnot. And if either that could be buddhi or a mind, I mean, that could be a discussion point. And let's say somebody praises me, then I feel good. Okay, so this is how it is. But if you really turn it inward, like, who needs a praise? I mean, we all like praise and we all like good things, but these sharira mana buddhi we need, because we don't have a independent barometer to test ourselves what we are doing is correct or not, what I'm eating is correct or not, or, what the company I'm keeping, it is right or wrong. That's why we are looking for a social acceptance, social signaling, virtue signaling, all that we hear. But if I have my own barometer, then I'm not dependent on whether people praise me or not. Even when people criticize me, if I feel convinced that what I'm doing is correct, then I can still proceed and I will be at peace. That's the another one, which is again goes back to the advice that you were saying. There are multiple things, but that subtle karma thing to think about is like, say somebody says, oh, I also want to do career. The person what you have to respond is how much of that career you are doing because you truly enjoy versus the social acceptance or the virtue signaling or what people will say. And that kind of helps you distinguish.
True. What you said is compartmentalization is also one solution, and switch off, switch on in the mind. Triggering the switch off and switch on signals, so that you can balance everything. Yeah, right. That's true. I think, of course, it's a very deep chapter, and once 20-30 minute session is not going to cover everything. But I think for the audience, we might come out after the first set of series with another series where we probably will do it shlok by shlok, or right, deep dive into more of it conceptually. Right. In the late, after we finish this one series of
round, one round going through all 18, let's say
all 18 chapters. Yeah. So I think we'll end here for everyone.
One point, Ashwini, that I forgot to mention that is relevant to this chapter. And in terms of like the sustainable cycle, I had understood it, but it was Jeffrey Armstrong, Kavindra Rishi, who brought to my attention. Think of 6 Vedangas. Okay, like, so we think of Shiksha, Chanda, Vyakarana, Nirukta, okay, and then Kalpa and Jyotisha, for example. And one time he asked me, so tell me, what is Kalpa? And actually it stumped me, because I know Kalpa Sutra in the sense of like certain rituals also, but also like a Dharma-Shastra also will come under the Kalpa. But I said, okay, so I know it's a Dharma-Shastra and then ritual, like, how to perform certain rituals. But what particular aspect it addresses? Just like Shiksha addresses how to pronounce, and Chanda addresses how to prosody, and Vyakarana talks about the understanding the grammar, and Nirukta, and Jyotisha is a time and astronomy. What is it Kalpa does? And it stumped me, although I knew Kalpa text. And he said, and I like it and I agree with it. And since then, after that, I studied many other texts, like many Vartak and many other, and they refer to that. I mean, many other great acharyas, which is, but not all acharyas. I mean, sometimes their emphasis wasn't on it, which is this, that Kalpa is a terrestrial, which is that sustainability, or now we get the fancy name environmental sustainability. But Kalpa is all about that, which is that chakra, Yajna chakra, that has been mentioned, which I missed mentioning it today, is that whatever we are taking from the nature, devatas, so Brahma, as if it said, Brahma has created this Yajna for you, which is to say, Yajna meaning whatever we are taking, we have to give it back to the one. And that also, like thinking in terms of that, is that your first anasakta nishkam yoga. Because if you think you are doing a favor, then the problem comes. But if you realize that you already have a debt from other, I mean, that you have to repay, then you are not going to think in terms of why am I doing it, or why that other person is not doing it. So what if the other person is not doing it? You do it. So anyways, that one point I had forgotten, so I thought I'll mention it.
Okay, we'll end here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jagdamba, Jagdamba, Jagdamba.